How do we compute for the sample mean, sample variance, and sample standard deviation? Let us first define mean. Mean is also known as the average. It is calculated by dividing the sum of the observations by the total number of observations. Variance. Variance is defined as the average of the squared deviations from the mean. The square root of this variance is known as the standard deviation. There are two formulas to compute for the sample variance and sample standard deviation. In formula number 1, we have here the sample mean. The symbol for that, we have x, and we have a line above of the x that is equal to the summation of x, or the number of observations, all over n, which is the total number of observations. For the sample variance, we have s squared as the symbol for sample variance. That is equal to the summation of the square of x sub I, for the scores, minus the sample mean, all over n minus 1. And for the sample standard deviation, all we have to do is to get the square root value of the variance. And that is the sample standard deviation. The symbol of that is S. Let's have example number 1. Find the sample standard deviation and variance of the following heights in centimeters of 10 plants. We have here the heights of 10 plants: 4, 12, 14, 15, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, and 25. For the first step, that is to arrange the values in increasing order. So yung magiging unang number is 4, next 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then the last height of plant is 25, which is the tallest plant. Next is step number 2. We have to compute for the sample mean. To compute for the sample mean, we have the symbol x and with a line above it. That is equal to the summation of x, or the number of observations, divided by the number of observations. We have here, all you have to do is to add all the heights of the plants, of the 10 plants, divided by how many plants? So there are 10. For the mean, using your calculator, we have here 16. Step number 3 is to get the individual deviations from the mean. Square each deviation. Find the sum of the squared deviations. There are 3 columns in the table. For the first column, these are the heights of the plants. For the second column, we have the difference of the height of the plant and also the sample mean na na-compute sa step number 2. And then sa third column, all you have to do, yung nakuha nyong sagot dito sa second column, is-square lang. So, first, you have 4 minus 16, that is negative 12. Yung 16 nakuha dun sa step number 2, which is the sample mean. So, yung difference niya is a negative number, which is negative 12. Kapag pig-square mo yan, that would be a positive number. So, later, we're going to identify what is the square of negative 12. Next is 12 minus 16 is negative 4. 14 minus 16 is negative 2. 15 minus 16 is negative 1. 16 minus 16 is 0. 17 minus 16 is 1. 18 minus 16 is 2. 19 minus 16 is 3. 20 minus 16 is 4. And 25 minus 16 is 9. To get the third column, all you have to do is to square the answers in the second column. So the square of negative 12, that would be a positive number, which is 144. Negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. And 9 squared is 81. We're not yet done because we are going to find the sum of the first column and then the third column. The sum of the first column, or the sum of the height of the plants, is 160. And the sum of the third column, which is the square of the score and then the sample mean, that is equal to 276. Next step is to divide the sum obtained in step number 5 by n minus 1 to get the sample variance and also get the sample standard deviation. So applying the formula now, we have the sample variance as s squared. So sa numerator, yun na yung summation. We have the summation of x sub I minus the sample mean squared. That is 276 that can be found in the third column. And we have n minus 1, which is 10 minus 1. So s squared is 30.67. Next, to get the sample standard deviation, we have to get the square root value of the sample variance. So that is S is equal to 5.54. For formula number 2, this can be used in computing for the sample variance and sample standard deviation. We have S squared equals N. N is the number of observations given a problem. N is multiplied to the summation of the observation, which is being squared, minus the summation of the score, which is being squared, all over n multiplied to the quantity n minus 1. For the sample standard deviation, all you have to do is to get the square value of the sample variance. Let's have this example, yung example natin kanina. We have the heights of the plants. We have the scores here, or the heights of the plants. We have 4, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 25. There are two columns here. And the second column, that is the square of the observations or the height of the plant. So, yung 4 hanggang 25 is square mo lang. So, 4 squared is 16, 12 squared is 144, 14 squared is 196, 15 squared is 225, 16 squared is 256, 17 squared is 289, 18 squared is 324, 19 squared is 361, 20 squared is 400, and 25 squared is 625. So next is to get the summation of that. Summation of the first column, that is 160, and then the summation of the second column, which is x squared, that is equal to 2,836. Applying the formula for the sample variance, we have the given values. S squared is equal to 10. 10 is the number of the observations in the problem, multiplied to the summation of x squared. Ito yun. We have 2,836 minus the summation of x, which is 160, and then yung 160 square. All over, ang n is 10, multiplied to the quantity 10 minus 1. So using your calculator, that would be equal to s squared equals 30.67. For sample standard deviation, square root mo lang yung 30.67, and that is 5.54. Kung mapapansin mo, gamitin mo man yung formula number 1 or formula number 2, pareho lang naman yung sagot for the sample variance and sample standard deviation using formula 1 and formula number 2.
Using your scientific calculator to compute for the sample variance in example number 1, since na yung nasa formula ay naka-fraction form, meaning we're going to use division as our operation. So, ito yung pipindutin natin na key sa ganitong calculator. So, we have like that. And then in the numerator, we have to press 10. And then open parenthesis for 2,836. And then close parenthesis minus open parenthesis 160, sobrahan ng 6, 160, close parenthesis, and then we have here x squared. So, click this key, and then click this down button para sa denominator. In the denominator, we have 10 times 10 minus 1. Yung 10 minus 1 nasa loob ng parenthesis. And then press equals. Yung sagot mo magiging ganyan. So, para maging decimal form, ito yung pipindutin mong key in the calculator. So, yan. We have here 30.67 as our sample variance using formula number 2 in example 1.
It's your turn. The table shows the number of applicants for a job posting in 5 days. Find the sample mean and sample standard deviation of the data. In the table, we have the days, Monday to Friday, and the number of applicants are recorded respectively. We have 80, 87, 90, 96, and 102. So in this problem, we're going to identify the sample mean and compute for the sample standard deviation. So the first step is to arrange the values in increasing order, and that is 80, 87, 90, 96, and 102. For step number 2, you have to compute for the sample mean. We have the given formula. All we have to do is to get the summation of the x, or the number of observations given in the problem, divided by n, or the number of observations. We have 80 plus 87 plus 90 plus 96 plus 102 divided by 5. Using your calculator, the sample mean is 91. Step number 3 is to get the individual deviations from the mean, square each deviation, and sum of the square deviation. So there are 3 columns here in the table. For the first column, these are the scores. For the second column, the difference between the score and then the sample mean, yung nakuha mo sa step number 2. And yung third column, that is the square of the second column. To get the total, plus nyo lang yung score. To get the total here in the first column, that is 455. And for the second column, we have 80 minus 91 as the sample mean. We have negative 11. 87 minus 91, we have negative 4. 90 minus 91, we have negative 1. 96 minus 91, we have 5. And 102 minus 91, we have 11. Then square, the square of negative 11 is 121. It is always positive. Kahit pa may negative dito, since na ang negative will be included inside the parentheses. Negative 4, the square of that is 16. The square of negative 1 is 1. 5 squared is 25, and 11 squared is 121. The total of the third column, or the summation of that, is 284. Applying the formula in step number 5, we have the numerator, yung total sa third column, which is 284, and then yung nasa divisor or nasa denominator, that is n minus 1. Yung n mo is the number of observations, since there are 5 numbers or in the data. So 5 minus 1. Using your calculator, 284 divided by 4 is 71. 71 is s squared, or the sample variance. The sample standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So if we are going to use formula number 2, that would be like this. Using again the data. We have the scores 80, 87, 90, 96, and 102. And in the first column, we're going to get the total of that, and that is 455. In the second column, we're going to get the square of the scores given. So 80 raised to 2 is 6,400. 87 squared is 7,569. 90 squared is 8,100. 96 squared is 9,216. And 102 squared, using your calculator, that is 10,404. So the total of the second column is 41,689. Using the formula number 2, all you have to do is to substitute the given values, or substitute the computed values given in the table. So n is 5 multiplied to the summation of x squared, that is 41,689, yung galing sa total sa column number 2, minus the summation of x, which is from the first column, that is 455, and then you're going to square that. All over 5 multiplied to the quantity 5 minus 1. So using your calculator, s squared is equal to 71. Which is pareho lang doon kung ginamit mo yung formula number 1. 71 pa din yung sagot dito as the sample variance. For the sample standard deviation, all you have to do is to get the square root of 71. Or what is the square root of 71? Using your calculator, that is 8.43. So the sample standard deviation is 8.43. Whether you use formula number 1 or formula number 2, pareho lang dapat yung sample variance and sample standard deviation. Either of the two.
In the activity part, kung ganito naman yung calculator na gamit mo, in the activity part, using formula number 2 sa numerator, so numerator na muna yung uunahin natin kasi para hindi ka masyadong mahirapan kung ganito yung gamit mong calculator. So, sa numerator, we have 5, open parenthesis for multiplication, 41,689. And then close parenthesis, minus, open parenthesis, we have 455, close parenthesis, and then this key for the exponent 2. And then you press equal sign. So yung sa numerator, we have 1,420. So, isulat mo muna yung numerator na 1,420. Sa denominator naman, we have 5, sobrahan ng 5, open parenthesis, 5 minus 1, close parenthesis, that is 20. Or pwede mo naman i-mental math na lang, 5 minus 1 is 4. Times 5, we have 20. So, yung sa numerator kanina, we have 1,420 divided by 20 equals, that is 71, which is the same if you're going to use formula number 1. Para makuha mo naman yung sample standard deviation kung ganito yung calculator mo, so yung 71, yan yung sample variance mo para makuha yung sample standard deviation, kunin mo lang yung square root ng 71. So, ito yung key na pipindutin for the square root. So, square root of 71 and then equal sign, that is 8.43.